people, what's going on? Dustin Dolby here. Welcome back to another mullet heavy edition of the program. Today we're going to be covering cosmetic product photography and just using a bunch of entry-level gear, speed lights, and a kit lens to build up something quite minimal with an elongated shadow and a bit of a minimal geometry vibe. I'll show you where to put a few lights to excite your scene and just get something going with this kind of minimal, bold vibe. Make sure to thumb up the video to spread it around the internet, and let's build this up. Huge shout out to Product Photo Stuff on Instagram. I'll link them below. Make sure to check them out. They give us the idea and composition for today's workflow, and they watch the program, so big shout out. Now, we're not going for a soft shadow like this. I bounced a speedlight off our ceiling before I filmed this, and that's soft, and that's buttery, and that's desirable, but not right now, because we want a long shadow. So we're gonna use a speedlight and create some distance to get that long shadow, right? Now, we have two other speedlights here. They're turned off for the moment. I think we should just work out this angle, because it's a huge staple of our composition, this harsh shadow, and just let's try to make it look attractive. So we're just on a piece of cardstock here, and I'm gonna work out the angle of this harsh shadow live on location. And it shouldn't be too tricky. A few tweaks will hopefully get this flush with the shooting surface, the piece of cardstock. And we could get longer shadows by lowering the light. We could get sharper shadows by backing up the light, but we're in a pretty small space, and honestly, this is working pretty good for what we need. Just making a few tweaks. We're using a remote, of course. I'll link it below, because you don't want to be shaking things as we move forward here. Maybe one more tweak to get that flush. What do you guys think? This is supposed to be on a ledge. It's not really on a ledge here. It's just on a piece of stock on a steel support plate, our lighting attachment underneath. I can complete the ledge illusion with another piece of cardstock, and sometimes people do this. They build a box. It probably wouldn't be the first thing I would reach for if I was thinking of doing this, bringing a light in the front. You could alternatively just do this digitally, make a little cutout in Photoshop. That's probably what I'll elect to do. But honestly, the best thing is a white shoebox. If you have a white shoebox, make sure to save them because they're so useful for making a ledge like this. They're kind of perfect, and they're just a really useful asset. Let's just straighten up our cosmetics here so we're ready to get a good slate of the front. And it's always subtle, tweaking your cosmetics, your rotations. And if you're shooting on the 2.5 LCD screen on your DSLR, you might think something straightened when in reality it needs a slight little breath of a tweak one way or the other. I definitely noticed a nice quality jump once I started shooting tethering versus shooting off the back of the DSLR back in the day when you first start. That's nice. That's a pretty bold composition. Everything's straightened. The shadows are straight. Maybe we'll shoot our background light into the scene now and start separating the two planes a little bit. So you could use the same light for all of this if you were ambitious. I have these all separated, so I'm going to bring in a backlight. And I love a white wall because it can be white, it can be black like you're seeing now, it can be gray, and these are all wonderful options. So a single speedlight in the back, pretty simple. And I just fired that off hitting Control K while tethering. Quick tip. And that's nice. Maybe a little more light, no? I worked this out to a good position before we started filming. I wanted to get something bright that kind of was reminiscent of like if you shot through a diffusion paper. Just a glow in the background, not centered, but something like that. I'm not getting too much blowback on the cosmetics from that light, but we could definitely crisp up the dark values a bit. And that's cool. Maybe I'll turn that off and we'll work on our front light. You could turn this background light off and shoot this at your label because our label is missing something here. But I just have the lights separated because I have 3 lights and it's better for compositing that way anyway. I just want to shoot a light onto this logo. So we'll composite that with the background slate. If we turn on this speedlight up here, and this is dead ahead over the camera, which gives you a great angle, just slam dunking that light right at your product. Gives you kind of a digital look too, out of camera, which is pretty trippy. You see the data on the label just got way, way more usable. In fact, we can go overboard because we're just using this for the label, this exposure. That's fantastic. And combining with your background slate, that's going to be invaluable, something like this. Anything where you can get out a curves layer real quick. Where are we going here? And just make it extremely stark. And this is the test you can do real quick in camera. If you can bring out like a complete silhouette of the logo, essentially, you know you're laughing and that's going to composite into your scene absolutely no problem. So that'll be really useful to combine with our other exposure. One other thing we can do to elevate this is once again bring out some cardstock. I'm a big fan of cardstock. And I'll use this as a reflector because it's a nice clean white surface. And I'll just bring it behind our scene and try to bounce some info onto the side of the product. Because I was thinking, if we can composite this label, that's great. But if we could grab something like this highlight up here, or even this long highlight down the side, that could be really useful with the label if we combine that with our base slate. So that's going to be our base composite here. We'll use that with the other exposures to elevate it. I'll grab all that info and I'll meet you inside of Photoshop and I'll run you through my compositing workflow. A quick thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's workflow. I'm on Skillshare, so for anyone looking to expand their creativity or skill set, Skillshare is offering the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so you can start exploring your creativity today. If you're a member on Skillshare, you'll get unlimited access to thousands of inspiring classes with hands-on projects and a feedback from a community of millions. If you're not sure where to start, Fundamentals of DSLR Photography by Justin Bridges is a Skillshare original and great place to get your feet wet. It's curated specifically for learning, so there's no ads. I like that. They're always launching new premium classes so you can stay focused and follow your creativity wherever it takes you. Thanks, Skillshare. Now let's hop into Photoshop. Alrighty then, here we are inside of Photoshop and we have our reflection logo brightening frame, and we just want to use that to enhance this base background cosmetic shot. And I'm going to duplicate this. We're going to bring it in 2 different times. For the first time, let's bring out a curves layer. Hold Alt and clip this to the reflection frame so it's just affecting it. And I'm going to make it extremely stark. Something like this. Hold Alt and make a black mask for this layer. And I just want to paint this in where the logo is. And we're going to put this on a certain blending mode. You can probably guess which one would work really well here. Did you get it? It's lighten blending mode. Lighten's going to cut through like butter. And just make sure that that's brightened, which is fantastic. Now something bled through there, so I'll get out my black brush and brush that blue light away. And since there is a bit of colored light in the scene, I might bring out a hue saturation effect above everything and just check. Yeah, there's some weird color going on. It's kind of really abstract. I'm going to desaturate it just to be safe. So now we affected that beautifully. Now I brought out a second instance of this layer for these highlights here that will blend in really seamlessly on lighten mode. So I'm going to make a black mask by holding Alt, clicking this button which omits the layer. Let's put it on lighten mode and I'll just paint it in the mask with a white brush in my foreground where these highlights are. And I kind of liked the gradient effect on that lid when it wasn't totally masked in. There we go. Just get a little gradient action going on, that's nice. And crop this inward a little bit, I'm going for something more vertical. Now for this ledge, let's get creative. Let's make a new layer above everything except the hue saturation. I'll respect that. And let's start at the edge of this cardstock. And I'm like a millimeter on the interior of it to be safe. I'm just going to click up with the polygonal lasso tool a few times and start to create a mask. I can hold shift to go straight down here at this edge, just to make sure it's straight. And I'm just masking off this corner triangle here. Fantastic. So I'll hit Control G and click the mask button with that selection present. So now I've saved that area here. And if I pasted black in a layer, you'd see we built a bit of a ledge. I want to get rid of this overhang here, so I'll make a new layer beneath the grouping. Hit I and sample the background color. Very simple. Now I don't want this ledge to go all the way to the bottom, so a good way to maintain its geometry but sort of cut it off here is to use the actual shape of the mask. I'm going to make a new layer, and this is just a placeholder so I can fill in any color here. I'll just fill it in with white. And you see if I move it straight down, we start to see the illusion of a thickness to the edge. And I'm going to use this to grab the anti-selection of what I don't want to be the ledge. Control click this layer, then I can make it invisible. We're done using it. Just paste black. So now we don't have to worry about everything getting all wonky. Alright, let's click the mask for this ledge grouping and just give a little bit of feather so it matches the fuzziness of real life. Now anything I put in this layer, in this grouping, is obviously going to apply to this ledge. So let's bring out a gradient tool, foreground to transparent. And let's give this ledge some character with a gradient, a simple gradient. And maybe something really broad. And you can always reduce the opacity of this after, just to give it a bit of character and bring it to life. And I'm going to add some noise to these. Let's merge these together and filter noise. I'm going to add noise. 2%, sure, monochromatic. And if I merge everything together, which I might do, make a new layer, Control-Shift-Alt-E to have a new copy of everything, I might add noise to everything just to increase the cohesion. Add noise, and that's wonderful. Now that everything's merged together, I can do a final few tweaks. How are we feeling about the applicator bristles? I'm feeling quite strongly about them. I'm going to make a selection around this and hit Control-J, Control-T, right-click, flip horizontal. And as you see, I just kind of duplicated these. And I didn't do it with any feather, which might have been better, but I'm going to try to match these up just so we can create some symmetry and kind of simplify it by nature. And I'm going to mask this with a black brush away from here where it got a little funky. That's a nice simplification. I also need to lower this cap, which I rotated because there's a sticker on the back, but it created a gap between here, so I chose the lesser of two evils. Let's bring out our pen tool, and we'll just make a little quarter selection here, and then here. Grab up and leave plenty of space above the cap because I'm going to lower it. I'll go to my paths, Control-click that path. Wonderful. So if I hit Control-J on this layer, that isolates this to its own layer. So now I can grab it and start tapping down, 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 and it will just close that gap, which is fantastic. There's still a little bit of ugliness between the layers, which isn't a huge problem. That's the last thing I'll have to retouch. I'll make a new layer above everything. I can hit I with my eyedropper and just grab similar colors on the cap and just fix this with the paintbrush tool. But it's just little tweaks like that that are way nicer for the viewer when they can be, not seeing the cap lifted or the bristles be weird on the applicator or little things like that to make the image sit better. So thanks for hanging out with us while we built up some cosmetic photography. Leave any questions below. Thank you again to Product Photo Stuff on Instagram. I'll link them below for the great idea for today's workflow. If you guys have any requests for future episodes, I'm producing a ton of content and I'd love to hear your ideas. Just leave them below. Before you leave, make sure to subscribe and thumb up the video. If you have any questions, leave them below in the chat. My name is Dustin Dolby. I'll catch you next time here on Workflow. Take care, everybody.